researchers believe they've discovered the origins of the Black Death.
Smallpox was one of the most frightening diseases the world has known.
Ever noticed how history seems to echo with the toll of pandemic bells every 100 years? Is it mere coincidence or a pattern woven into the timeline of humanity? Let's unravel the mystery of these century-spanning outbreaks and ponder their eerie regularity. The Black Death and its Shadows, 14th century. In the mid-14th century, a shadow fell over the globe, heralding one of the most devastating pandemics in human history, the Black Death. Originating in Asia, this bubonic plague swept through continents with merciless fury, reaching Europe in 1347, where it embarked on a grim dance of death that lasted until 1353.
The microbe that caused the Black Death killed some 30 million people in Western Europe.
But what was the Black Death, and how did it cast such a long shadow over humanity? The Black Death was caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, transmitted to humans from fleas carried by rats. The pandemic likely originated in the steppes of Central Asia, traveling along the Silk Road and reaching Crimea. From there, it was just a flea's jump to Europe, courtesy of the bustling trade routes. The disease spread rapidly, exploiting the densely populated cities of Europe, where sanitation was more of a suggestion than a practice. The toll was staggering. It's estimated that the Black Death killed between 75 million and 200 million people, wiping out about 60% of Europe's population. This massive loss of life disrupted entire societies, economies, and ways of life. Labor shortages led to economic upheaval, while psychological impacts fueled superstition and persecution, notably against Jews, who were falsely accused of causing the plague. The horror of the Black Death wasn't a one-time event. The plague resurfaced in waves throughout the following centuries, each outbreak reigniting the fear and devastation of the past. These recurrent plagues served as grim reminders of the initial pandemic, shaping an enduring legacy of societal and medical responses to disease. Faced with an invisible enemy, societies adapted. The concept of quarantine emerged during the Black Death, with ships arriving in Venice being isolated for 40 days, a practice that gave birth to the term. Quarantine, from the Italian quaranta giorni, meaning 40 days. This period of isolation was one of the earliest public health measures aimed at controlling the spread of infectious diseases. Moreover, the repeated assaults of the plague spurred changes in medical practices and public health policies. Though the understanding of disease transmission was rudimentary at best, the necessity of managing public health crises led to the development of more organized responses, including the establishment of plague hospitals and the implementation of stricter sanitation laws. The 16th century smallpox, a New World's nightmare. As the 14th century shadow of the Black Death slowly receded, the world was on the brink of encountering another invisible killer, one that would leave an indelible mark on history. Smallpox, a virulent and deadly disease, had long tormented the old world. However, it was in the 16th century that smallpox embarked on a devastating voyage to the New World, where it unleashed a nightmare of unprecedented proportions on the indigenous populations of the Americas. The arrival of European explorers and settlers in the Americas marked the beginning of a new era. With them, they brought not only their ambitions and dreams, but also diseases unknown to the native populations. Among these, smallpox proved to be the deadliest.
It killed at least 300 million people in the last century.
Its introduction is believed to have been an accident, an unseen stowaway on the ships that crossed the Atlantic. The indigenous peoples, with no immunity to the disease, were ravaged by an epidemic that swept across the continent with frightening speed. The impact of smallpox on the indigenous populations of the Americas was catastrophic. The disease decimated communities, wiping out entire villages and tribes. It is estimated that in the first century after contact with Europeans, diseases like smallpox killed up to 90% of the indigenous population in some areas. This staggering loss of life was not just a biological disaster, but also a cultural tragedy, as the social fabric of many societies was irreparably torn. In the Old World, smallpox was an ancient foe. Historical records suggest that smallpox had been afflicting humans for thousands of years, with evidence of the disease found in Egyptian mummies. Over time, populations in Europe, Asia, and Africa had developed some level of immunity to the disease, thanks to continuous exposure. This immunity did not make the disease any less feared. Smallpox outbreaks could still cause significant mortality and morbidity. However, it meant that the Old World societies were not completely defenseless against the disease. The contrast with the New World could not have been starker. The indigenous peoples of the Americas had no such immunity, having never encountered the virus before. The result was a demographic collapse that had no parallel in human history. The speed and scale of the devastation brought by smallpox, combined with the lack of effective countermeasures, made the pandemic a defining catastrophe of the century. The introduction of smallpox and its rapid spread among the indigenous populations facilitated European conquest and colonization of the Americas. The disease weakened the native societies, making them more susceptible to conquest by European powers. This led to significant shifts in the balance of power, the repercussions of which are still felt today. The loss of life also had profound cultural implications. With the deaths of so many valuable knowledge, traditions, and languages were lost forever. The fabric of societies was altered as survivors struggled to rebuild their communities and preserve what remained of their cultures. The smallpox pandemic of the 16th century underscores the devastating impact of disease on human history. It highlights the vulnerability of societies in the face of new and unknown threats, as well as the tragic consequences of contact between disparate worlds. The story of smallpox in the Americas is a sobering reminder of the power of disease to shape the course of history. The 17th and 18th centuries, plagues on the rise. As the pages of history turned from the 16th to the 17th century, humanity faced yet another series of relentless challenges. The specter of plague, not unlike the smallpox tragedy in the New World, continued to haunt the Old World.
You just mentioned killed some 50% of the European population in 1346.
This period was marked by two significant outbreaks: the Great Plague of London in the 17th century and the Marseille Plague of 1720 in the 18th century. These events not only tested the resilience of human societies, but also shaped the trajectory of public health and societal structures. The Great Plague of London stands as one of the last major outbreaks in the series of bubonic plagues that had ravaged Europe since the Black Death. The disease, caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, was transmitted by fleas carried by rats, a grim reminder of the interconnectedness of human and animal health. The plague hit London in 1665, a city already teeming with people and plagued by poor sanitation. The outbreak claimed an estimated 100,000 lives, approximately a quarter of London's population at the time. The societal impact was profound. The city ground to a halt, with businesses closed and families torn apart by loss. The streets, usually bustling with life, were marked by the haunting sound of carts collecting the dead. The Great Plague of London catalyzed a series of public health measures that would lay the groundwork for modern epidemic management. Quarantine laws were strictly enforced, with the sick being isolated and their homes marked with a red cross and the words, "Lord, have mercy upon us." Public gatherings were banned, and trade was severely disrupted, showcasing an early understanding of social distancing and lockdown measures. Additionally, the crisis highlighted the need for better urban planning and sanitation. The rebuilding of London after the Great Fire of 1666, which followed closely on the heels of the plague, incorporated wider streets and the construction of new, less densely packed buildings, aiming to prevent future outbreaks. Moving into the 18th century, the Marseille Plague serves as another critical point in the history of pandemics. Originating from a ship arriving from the Levant, the plague quickly spread through the city of Marseille, one of France's largest ports, killing a significant portion of its population. This outbreak demonstrated the critical role of trade and travel in the spread of infectious diseases, highlighting the global interconnectedness that could facilitate the rapid movement of plagues across continents.
Where the bubonic plague began. Now, analysis suggests it was in Kyrgyzstan.
The Marseille plague underscored the importance of port quarantine measures, which, although in place, were insufficient to stop the spread of the disease. The economic ramifications of these plagues were significant. Trade was disrupted, agricultural production declined due to labor shortages, and entire industries were temporarily paralyzed. The social fabric of communities was stretched thin, with widespread fear leading to social isolation and, in some cases, the scapegoating of marginalized groups. However, these outbreaks also prompted innovation in public health and governance. The establishment of more structured quarantine measures, the development of health boards and better sanitary practices, and the rise of public hospitals can all be traced back to the societal responses to these crises. Cholera and the 19th century. Waves of despair. As the 19th century dawned, humanity was on the cusp of monumental changes. The Industrial Revolution was reshaping societies, and with it, urbanization and global trade were bringing people closer together than ever before. However, this new interconnectedness also facilitated the spread of a deadly new scourge: cholera. Originating near Kolkata, India, cholera would unleash a series of pandemics that would traverse continents, leaving despair in their wake. Cholera, caused by the bacterium Vibrio cholerae, found a fertile breeding ground in the Ganges Delta of India. From there, it spread far and wide, exacerbated by trade routes and the movement of troops. The 19th century witnessed several major cholera pandemics, each wave spreading further and killing more. The disease's hallmark, severe diarrhea, led to rapid dehydration and death, striking fear into the hearts of populations worldwide. Cholera's reach was global, affecting every continent. Its spread was facilitated by the increased mobility of the age, including the movement of soldiers and immigrants. Cities, with their crowded living conditions and inadequate sanitation, were particularly hard hit. The pandemics claimed millions of lives, causing widespread panic and significant social and economic disruption. The cholera pandemics of the 19th century played a pivotal role in the development of epidemiology. The most famous example is that of Dr. John Snow in London, who, during the 1854 outbreak, used meticulous case tracking and mapping to identify a contaminated public water pump on Broad Street as the source of the outbreak. Snow's work demonstrated the importance of clean water supply and sanitation in controlling the disease and provided a groundbreaking example of the use of data in public health. This period also saw the decline of the miasma theory of disease, which posited that diseases were spread by bad air, and the gradual acceptance of the germ theory. The understanding that diseases could be caused by specific pathogens and spread through water and other means marked a significant advancement in medical science and public health. The cholera pandemics were a catalyst for public health reforms. The stark evidence that contaminated water sources were a primary vector for cholera led to significant investment in water and sewage treatment infrastructure. London, for instance, undertook a massive overhaul of its sewage system under the guidance of engineer Joseph Bazalgette, significantly improving the city's sanitation and reducing the incidence of waterborne diseases. Moreover, the repeated cholera pandemics underscored the need for international cooperation in health matters. The International Sanitary Conferences, first convened in 1851, were among the earliest efforts to establish international standards for disease control, laying the groundwork for modern international health organizations. The 20th century and the Spanish flu, a modern apocalypse. As the world grappled with the final stages of World War I, an unseen enemy emerged, one that would eclipse the horrors of the battlefield and mark the early 20th century with one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, the Spanish flu. Between 1918 and 1920, this influenza virus circumnavigated the globe, indiscriminately claiming lives and testing the limits of a society already strained by war. The Spanish flu pandemic, caused by the H1N1 influenza virus, exhibited a ferocity and reach unparalleled in modern history. It infected an estimated one-third of the world's population and claimed between 50 to 100 million lives, a mortality rate vastly exceeding the casualties of the war itself. Its spread was facilitated by the global movements of troops and the poor living conditions of the time, which created ideal conditions for transmission. Unlike typical influenza outbreaks that disproportionately affected the very young and the old, the Spanish flu struck down healthy young adults, leaving communities and economies in disarray. The speed with which it killed was shocking. Many who felt well in the morning could be dead by nightfall. The timing of the Spanish flu, coming on the heels of World War I, compounded its impact. Medical infrastructure was overwhelmed, not just by the war wounded, but now by flu victims. Many of the era's best doctors and nurses were on the front lines, leaving civilian medical facilities understaffed and ill-equipped to handle the deluge of patients. The war also hindered early responses to the pandemic. Censorship and the desire to maintain morale meant that news of the flu's devastation was often suppressed. Interestingly, it received the moniker Spanish flu, not because it originated in Spain, but because Spain, being neutral in the war, did not censor news of the flu, making it seem as though the country was particularly hard hit. The catastrophic toll of the Spanish flu catalyzed advances in public health and disease control. For the first time, the concept of social distancing took hold on a wide scale, with cities around the world closing schools, theaters, and other public gathering places in an effort to halt the spread of the virus. The use of masks became widespread, and public health campaigns sought to educate the public on hygiene practices to mitigate transmission. The pandemic also underscored the need for international cooperation in health matters. In its aftermath, countries recognized the importance of sharing information and resources to combat such global threats. This period saw the foundations laid for organizations like the World Health Organization, established in 1948, which would play crucial roles in future public health crises. Moreover, the Spanish flu spurred scientific advances in virology and immunology. The quest to understand and combat the flu virus led to the development of the first influenza vaccines in the 1930s, marking a significant milestone in medical history. The 21st century and COVID-19, history repeats. As the clock struck midnight on December 31st, 2019, the world was unaware that it stood on the precipice of a global crisis reminiscent of the pandemics that had periodically reshaped human history. The novel coronavirus, later named COVID-19, emerged in Wuhan, China, marking the beginning of a pandemic that would mirror the fearsome outbreaks of the past, yet unfold in a world transformed by technology and interconnectedness. COVID-19, caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, quickly transcended its initial epicenter, spreading to every corner of the globe with unprecedented speed. International travel and trade, hallmarks of our globalized world, acted as conduits for the virus, demonstrating how modern advancements could facilitate the spread of disease as much as they have fostered economic and cultural exchange. By March 2020, the World Health Organization had declared COVID-19 a pandemic, signaling the start of a global health crisis that would strain healthcare systems, disrupt economies, and alter the fabric of daily life. Lockdowns, quarantines, and social distancing measures became part of a collective effort to stem the tide of infections, echoing the public health responses of pandemics past. Unlike the pandemics that came before, the fight against COVID-19 was armed with the tools of modern science and technology. Genomic sequencing allowed for the rapid identification of the virus and global. Data-sharing platforms facilitated an unprecedented level of international collaboration in understanding the disease and developing countermeasures. The development of COVID-19 vaccines broke records for speed, with multiple effective vaccines being deployed within a year of the virus's identification. This feat was a testament to the advances in medical science since the days of the Spanish flu, showcasing the potential of mRNA technology and other innovations. Digital technology also played a crucial role, with apps for contact tracing and platforms for disseminating public health information becoming key components of the response. The COVID-19 pandemic has had profound and ongoing impacts on global health, economies, and societies. Millions of lives have been lost, and the economic toll has been staggering, with businesses closed and global supply chains disrupted. Education systems have been challenged, and the pandemic has exacerbated inequalities, hitting hardest at the most vulnerable populations. Yet, as history has shown, pandemics also offer lessons. COVID-19 has underscored the importance of preparedness, the value of science and public health infrastructure, and the critical need for global cooperation in the face of shared threats. It has highlighted vulnerabilities in global health systems and the consequences of neglecting them. Comparing COVID-19 to past pandemics reveals both continuity and change. Like the pandemics of history, COVID-19 spread along the pathways of human movement and trade, exploiting the interconnectedness of the modern world. The public health measures employed, from quarantines to mask wearing, echo the responses of the past, adapted to the current context. However, the scale and speed of the scientific and technological response mark a departure from previous outbreaks. The ability to decode the virus's genome and develop vaccines in record time are achievements that past generations could scarcely have imagined. The rise of digital health and pandemic surveillance. The 21st century has not only been defined by the challenges posed by pandemics like COVID-19, but also by the revolutionary advances in technology that have transformed the landscape of public health surveillance and disease management. Digital health technologies, including artificial intelligence, AI, big data analytics, and mobile health (mHealth) applications, have emerged as critical tools in detecting, tracking, and managing infectious disease outbreaks. This chapter explores the evolution of digital health and its role in revolutionizing pandemic surveillance and response. Digital health encompasses a broad range of technologies designed to enhance healthcare delivery, management, and planning. It includes electronic health records, EHRs, telehealth services, wearable devices, and mobile health apps, all aimed at improving access to information, enhancing the quality of care, and facilitating the efficient allocation of resources. The advent of digital health technologies has significantly improved the ability of health authorities to monitor and respond to infectious disease outbreaks. For instance, AI and machine learning algorithms can analyze vast amounts of data from various sources, including social media, news reports, and EHRs, to detect early signs of an outbreak. This real-time surveillance allows for swift action, potentially containing the spread before it escalates into a global crisis. Big data analytics play a crucial role in understanding disease patterns and transmission dynamics. By analyzing data collected from smartphones, wearable devices, and other sensors, researchers can model disease spread and effectiveness of interventions, providing valuable insights for policymaking. Several instances highlight the effective use of digital health in pandemic response. During the COVID-19 pandemic, countries like South Korea and Singapore leveraged contact tracing apps and mass testing, facilitated by digital technologies, to quickly isolate cases and prevent widespread transmission. Similarly, AI-powered tools were used to scan scientific literature and databases at unprecedented speeds, aiding in the rapid development of vaccines and therapeutics. Despite its potential, the rise of digital health is not without challenges. Issues related to data privacy, security, and ethical considerations of surveillance are of paramount concern. Ensuring the accuracy and reliability of data, alongside addressing the digital divide that leaves certain populations at a disadvantage, are critical areas that require ongoing attention and innovation. The future of digital health and pandemic preparedness and response is promising, but requires a concerted effort from governments, technology companies, and the global health community. Investment in robust digital infrastructure, alongside policies that promote ethical standards and data protection, will be key to harnessing the full potential of digital health technologies. Moreover, fostering global collaboration and sharing of digital health resources and data can enhance the collective ability to manage future pandemics more effectively. The integration of digital health into traditional public health strategies signifies a paradigm shift towards a more proactive and data-driven approach to disease control and prevention.